Good day to everyone. My name is Rosen Moncada and my report is all about French structuralism and definition of poetics. So this is Claude Lévi-Strauss. Structuralism rose to prominence in France through the application by the French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss of Saussurian structural linguistics to the study of such phenomena as myth, rituals, kinship relations, and eating convention. So, structuralism, known in France because of anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss. Claude Lévi-Strauss expanded the insights of Ferdinand Saussure on language. In work of Ferdinand Saussure, it focused on how language works, but in Claude Lévi-Strauss, he expanded and wider in socio-cultural. Claude met trivia. Claude met Roman Jacobson in America, who influenced Claude Lévi-Strauss, which turned towards structuralism and allowed Claude Lévi-Strauss to explore structuralism as a tool of analyzing human society. Next, these were understood as signifying system and therefore open to a linguistic type of analysis in which attention was focused on not on empirical or functional matters, but on myth or rituals as a set of relation in which meaning was created by difference between signifying elements. So, Claude Lévi-Strauss studied phenomena as myth, rituals, kinship relations, and eating convention. In that study, it can understand the signifying system. What is signifying system? Signifying system is a system of sign that made up of signifiers and signified. So, Claude Lévi-Strauss focused on analyzing myth and rituals. So, why he focused on myth and rituals? Because he is an anthropologist. An anthropologist studied human society. And what is myth? Myth is the composed of language or sign which helps human to understand the beliefs of society. Next, this is use of language as a model for understanding aspects of reality that are predominantly non-linguistic in character. Established structuralism, particularly in 1960s, as a powerful alternative to positivistic or empiricist method of analysis. So, in that, language become a model for understanding aspect because language is very important to understand the reality, and language is important in non-linguistic. We all know that language can seen in a different way. In non-linguistic. Non-linguistic is a language uh, that can't vocalize, like our body language and gesture. So in that way, structuralism known in 1960s. During that time, structuralism is powerful alternative method than positivity and empiricist method of analysis. Next slide. Literature seems especially appropriate to a structuralist approach since it was wholly made of language. So why appropriate? Because because literature is composed of or made of language, and structuralism approach can apply in different fields like linguistics, anthropology, and sociology. Thus, structuralist literary criticism tends to emphasize the system of conventions which make literature possible and to attach little importance to authorial or historical consideration or to question of meaning or reference. So meaning, the structural literary criticism is focused on the importance of the system convention of literature. Literature convention is like genre. So in that way, we can easily know the authors of that work and the source of information. In criticism, it is important to know what is genre and author and some reference to support your idea. Next is, as language from Saussurian point of view, is seen as signifying system in which the relations between the elements that make up the systems are crucial, so literature could be seen as embodying systematic sets of rules and codes which enable literature to signify. So meaning, in Saussurean point of view, language seen as signifying system. Signifying system is a system of sign. So language seen as a sign, and language has literal and deep meaning. So in that, literature is composed so in that literature is composed of language that used to communicate the meaning of the literature. Next, by considering literary texts as paroles, which must be understood in relation to lang, or underlying signifying system. Structuralist criticism inevitably concerned itself predominantly with poetics as general science literatures. Individual texts were used mainly exemplify general characteristic literature as a whole. So meaning of literary text considered as parole because parole can seen in form of writing or speech. Literary text is a piece of writing such as book and poem of an author. Parole is made by individual that use concrete language. So meaning literary text is very detailed and the information is precise. And what is lang? Lang is focused on the rules of the elements, includes the system of grammar, spelling, syntax, and punctuation. So in structuralist literary criticism is important in poetics. So next is individual text used to present, understand the general kinds or characteristic of literature includes like character, settings, plot, theme, and sequence. These are the characteristic of literature to understand the text as a whole or as the literature as a whole. Next, Stevenson, Todorov, and Gerald Gennett are most associated with this approach as can be seen in two selections from their work reprinted here. The most reprinted here. So uh, Tibetan Todorov and Gerald Gennett is used the approach of structuralism. Next is the most famous structuralist critic was Roland Barthes, but Barthes gradually moved away from strictly structuralist position. It is thus appropriate to end the first sections of this reader with his article Science versus Literature, since it points the way towards post-structuralism, which has been the dominant influence on more. So the most structuralist critics was Roland Barthes, but he moved away because of strictly position. Because of Roland Barthes' work of Science versus Literature, these works point him toward in post-structuralism, and post-structuralism is become more influence to the past literary theory. Next, this is Tibetan Todorov. Tibetan Todorov definition of poetics. To understand what poetics is, we must start from a general and of course of somewhat simplified image of literary studies. It is unnecessary to describe actual schools and tendencies. It will suffice to recall the positions taken with regard to several basic choices. So he said that to understand poetics, we must start in general. So first, what is poetics? Poetics, commonly defined as an art of writing poetry. So, wha- uh, why he said that we must start from a general? So, for me, because we didn't understand poetics if we didn't understand the rules of writing a poetry. We all know that it is not easy to write a poetry, and it is hard to understand the meaning if we study it. Next slide. Initially, there are two attitudes to be distinguished. One sees the literary text itself as a sufficient object of knowledge. So, meaning of this, the literary text is an object that source of knowledge. Another another attitude is the other consider each individual's text as the manifestation of an abstract structure. So meaning of this, the individual text shows an abstract structure. Abstract abstract structures show a set of laws. And meaning we need to visualize and analyze to understand the individual text. Next, the first attitude for the literary work is the ultimate and unique object, and which we shall here and henceforth call interpretations. Interpretation, which is sometimes also called exegesis, commentary, explication, the text, close reading, analysis, or even just a criticism, is defined in the sense we give it here by its aim, which is to name the meaning of the text examined. This aim forthwith determines the ideals of this attitude, which is to make the text itself speak. So meaning of this, we need to interpret the literary work, and we can interpret it if we read, analyze, and criticize the literary works to know what is the meaning or the message and the structures of a literary text or works. Next, samples. It is fidelity to the object, to the other, and consequently an effacement of the subjects as well as its drama, which is to be meaning subject to historical and psychological contingencies. This ideal, this drama will be modulated down through the history of commentary itself co-extensive with the history of humanity. So we all know that drama, it's hard to realize the meaning. But if we investigating history of that drama and experience um, real and relate it to that, the viewer of drama can control because of the past of humanity. Next slide. In effect, it is impossible to interpret a work, literary or otherwise, for an in itself, without leaving it for a moment, without projecting it as some worse than upon itself, or rather, this task is possible, but then description is merely a word for word repetition of the work itself. It espouses the forms of the work so closely that the two are identical, and in a certain sense, every work constitutes its own best descriptions. If the interpretation was the generic term for the first type of analysis to which we submit the literary text. So meaning, we didn't understand a work if we didn't reading, analyzing, giving an opinion, or giving an opinion. So it may be possible to understand a work if you know what is the exactly meaning of those words in text. And if the interpretation is general, it can be a form of literary text. Next, The second attitude remarks about can be inscribed within the general context of science by using this word, which is the average literary man does not favor. We intend to refer less to the degree of precision this activity achieves than to the general perspective chosen by the analyst. His goal is no longer the descriptions of the particular work, the designations of its meaning, but the establish of general laws of which particular text is the product. So meaning in this slide is it says that uh, we all know that uh, it's not easy to know the meaning of a poetry. In this slide, uh, for me, for example, is the content of example is the content of the poem is not based on the title, but on every word contained it. So meaning we can understand if we base on the title, but if we read the whole literary text, we understand the general meaning of the literary text. Next, within the second within the se- within the second attitude, we may distinguish several varieties at first glance very remote from one another. Indeed, we find here in side by side psychological or psychoanalytic, sociological or ethnological studies, as well as those derived from philosophy or from the history of ideas. All deny the autonomous character of literary works and regard it as manifestation of laws that are external to it and concern the psyche or society or even the humankind. So meaning in different varieties in psychological, sociological, or ethnological studies, as well as obtained from history ideas or philosophy, there are the same meaning of the literary work. Uh, the same meaning of literary work is the manifestation of something external. Next, literary work is the expression of something, and the goal of such studies is to reach the something through the poetic code. So, meanings in structural approach to literary studies in poetics seek to reach something through poetic code. Next slide. Excuse me. Um, Poetics breaks down the symmetry thus established between interpretations and science in the field of literary studies. In contradiction to interpretation of particular works, it does not seek the name of meaning, but it aims a knowledge of the general laws that presides over the birth of each work. But in contradictions to science, as psychology, sociology, and other, it seeks that it seeks these laws within literature itself. Poetics is therefore an approach to literature at once abstract and eternal. So meaning, in the field of literary studies in poetics, that poetics establish between interpretation and science, that we didn't find the meaning in the title, but when you read the whole and read the whole literary text or interpret the literary text, you can know the meaning of the literary text in general. And then science is can seek in literature. Next is, the goal of the study is no longer than to articulate a paraphrase, a descriptive resume of the concrete work, but to propose a theory of the structure and functioning of literary discourse, a theory that affords a list of literary possibilities so that existing literary works appear as achieve particular cases. So the meaning, the goal of this study is to propose a theory of the structures and functioning of literary discourse to achieve the particular cases. Another knowledge in poetics is, the goal of poetics is to go beyond the individual literary text and to inquire into the structure and the system which produce work. So another knowledge in poetics is, Todorov said that poetics is no true sum of empirical phenomena, but an abstract of structure. That is my report of French structuralism and definition of poetics. Thank you for listening.